Okay.
Drag us out.
Hit us with your first idea, Trent. Why reason number one, theory number one, why do you think senior NCOs sometimes have a disassociation from the people problem?
Well, hurt people. So I think it's easy for them to think that they understood what was happening early on in their career. So if you were an E4 back in like early GWAT or whatever, and your senior NCO was mean in your mind, and then you make it there someday, and you're this like E7, E8, this mentality of, well, this is how it was for me, so this is how it's going to be for the next generation, is just so. I think it's fairly pervasive. Like we see it all the time. Like, well, when I was a dude, like stop thinking about yourself. Like so many self-centered people that are, in love with whatever their idea of their experience was, that they're going to pass that along to the next generation. Instead of like, if you're so grumpy about the way it was for you, why wouldn't you change that? So, yeah. Like how many times have you guys heard that? Someone was like, well, when I was coming up, or my E8s when I was young were a bunch of dicks. So why wouldn't we all be dicks?
Right. Well, and it's a little bit narcissistic, right? Like inherent in that view is like, well, they made me into this super stellar guy that I am today. So I need to make sure that I can make you into a good guy. And this is how you do it. Like, there's all of these things are wrapped up in, nature versus nurture. And a lot of it is parenting, like leading, guiding, mentoring, trying to bring up the next generation. Like you can't help but that's why you call people kids. And that's why you feel like sometimes at work, like people will call their team sergeant dad, and if you have the, quintessential Hollywood senior NCO that's like, he's seen stuff, man. He's grizzled. He ain't got time for you young kids today. That it becomes like almost this caricature that people put on. And it's funny watching people go from like E6 to E7, because the minute they put on E7, they take on this whole different affect. And like, bro, you're the same guy you were a week and a half ago. You just have a little different rank on your chest. Like, why are we acting differently? It's a weird thing. And it
all
does
of a sudden
happen.
They're like, what are you, a weatherman? You're telling me how nice today is? It's like, whoa, dude.
Take it easy, Tom. We just had lunch last week. You had 2 beers. It was great. Like, what are we talking about?
Yeah. Peaches? What? You got anything? You look like you were going to say something.
No. I've never understood the grizzled and crusty. I mean, they're fun to make fun of, right? It's funny. You got some grizzled and crusty, salty senior NCO and that kind of stuff. But I don't get the disassociation, and I don't get I think I know more. Obviously, you are going to be wiser in the ways of the Air Force and the way the military works and stuff like that, right? Just because you've been around it, you've had that kind of time to season and see the ebbs and flows of what the military naturally does, whether it's in terms of manning, in terms of, okay, the Air Force is really fat. Now it's slimmed down. The whole, you get all the different do more with less, which we all know what do more with less means. It's just... so yeah, I don't know where I was going with that, but
no. Well, and I remember being, like an E4. I think it takes a village, to turn someone like me into a decent human being, right? Like, so like, it's not like every senior NCO that I ever like looked up to was the same person. Like we had the guy at my detachment at Fort Bragg who was like kind of like the team dad or mom who like took care of everybody, but would also hold you to the standards. We did have that like crusty dude, and I've talked about him, who like legit threatened our lives if we didn't stay in good enough shape. Like if he catches you on a run, I was fairly certain he was going to crack my skull open, and do whatever he had to do. So like when I say this, I'm thinking a lot of these people might just not have the confidence to lead or to be the senior NCO that they who they are, like just to be like open and honest about everything. That's the only excuse I can come up with why you wouldn't interact with the younger people in your unit if you're like not very confident in the way that you're going to interact with them, if you're afraid of being seen as like a human being instead of, the senior NCO, the person in charge, the team sergeant or whatever. So, I think I've seen that a few times throughout my career too. Like the people that are less confident in their abilities tend to be a little more closed off and a little more, by the book.
Well, it could be an extrovert versus introvert kind of thing. Also a comfort level thing. I don't like being behind my computer. However, I find myself behind my computer more often just because I fall so far behind with things that need to get done. And unfortunately, being on the computer or being on the phone is also one of the ways that I am helping members with pay issues, assignment issues, whether there's disciplinary issues like that. That is the way now that I essentially work. And then also I have to, divide my time and understand that I need to spend time with people as well. So it's tough because I know that for every, half hour or whatever it is that I am either on the road traveling, out at a lunch with somebody or just going and visiting unit, that I am falling farther and farther behind. So it's understanding that. So, that's why my phone is attached to me all the time, which I'm sure people notice, but it's like, damn, dude, I got to, because I'm always getting phone calls. I'm always getting messages. I got to follow up. And if I have a 10-minute break, now I need to call, I need to use this 10 minutes to start knocking out some of my to-do list. And then you fall into that part where you get comfortable with it, in terms of, you're like, oh man, being behind the computer is my comfort zone. And that is not a good place to be. And I recognize that in myself, even though I hate being behind the computer and look for excuses to get out from behind it. So
it's every E7's dream. And you say it the day that you put it on, you're like, I'm not going to be that master sergeant that's out of shape. I'm not going to be that guy that just sits in his office and does stuff. I'm going to maintain all my currencies. I'm going to be with the bros. Like, this is going to be a thing. And then, you get mugged by reality where you have 25 EPBs to write every cycle and, 30 awards. And your primary duty is a different duty than you had maybe, even as a team sergeant. Like, your job isn't to go out and job every single day on core skills. If you're a good NCO, if you were a good NCO and a good teammate, you were doing that for 10 years before that, right? Like, it's time to do other things as your primary duty. And it's hard to strike a balance. There are definitely times in my career where I walked out of my office for the first time all day and was like, I was just drowning in admin. Like, I couldn't go out on, somebody would poke their head in, they'd be like, hey, we're going to go to lunch. Looking back on it now, I think that admin work probably would have been there after I turned lunch down, and maybe I should have went out and been like, hey, you know 100%. What? This is going to get put in there when it gets put in there. And yeah, let's go sit down for lunch. Or yeah, you know what? I can take 4 hours off and go to the range today, as opposed to doing this other admin work that needs to get done. But it's easy to lose sight of it. Like, and I think we all have, just like you said.